The massive Corvanian battleship Dark Wing drifted silently through the empty space between star systems. Commander Thane stood on the bridge, his tall frame casting shadows across the control panels. His scaled skin caught the blue light from the displays as he watched his crew work. "Another quiet patrol," muttered Lieutenant Vex from his position at the weapons console. 3 weeks without seeing anything more interesting than space dust. Thane nodded but kept his eyes on the main screen. The Corvanian Empire controlled hundreds of worlds, and their military ships constantly patrolled the borders. Most of the time they found nothing. Sometimes they discovered new worlds to conquer. Today felt different, though Thane could not explain why. "Commander," called Communications Officer Beck from across the bridge. "I'm picking up a weak signal. Very faint." Thane turned toward her. "What kind of signal?" "Distress beacon, sir. Unknown frequency. The pattern is strange. Not like anything in our databases." "Show me," Thane ordered. The main screen flickered and displayed a small blinking dot in the vast darkness of space. The signal pulsed weakly like a dying heartbeat. "Distance?" Thane asked. 2 hours at current speed," Beck replied. "The signal is coming from something small." "Very small." Lieutenant Vex laughed. "Probably just space junk. Some old probe that got lost." Thane studied the display. Something about the signal bothered him. It was too regular, too purposeful to be random space debris. "Take us closer. But slowly. Keep weapons ready." The Dark Wing changed course and began moving toward the source of the signal. As they got closer, their sensors began picking up more details. What they found surprised everyone on the bridge. "It's a ship," announced scanner operator Dale, his voice filled with wonder. "But like nothing I've ever seen before." The vessel that appeared on their screens was tiny compared to the massive Corvanian battleship. It was roughly cylindrical, made of what looked like simple metal plates welded together. Scorch marks covered its hull, and one side showed clear damage from some kind of explosion. "Primitive construction," observed Chief Engineer Dane over the communication system. "Basic fusion drive, simple life support systems. Whoever built this is far behind us in technology." "Life signs?" Thane asked. Dale worked his controls carefully. "Yes, sir. One life form aboard. Weak readings. Whatever it is, it's barely alive." Thane made his decision quickly. "Bring it aboard. Use the small cargo bay. Have Dr. Kane meet us there with a full medical team." "Sir," Vex said carefully, "we don't know what kind of creature this is. It could be dangerous." "Look at that ship," Thane replied, pointing at the damaged vessel on the screen. "Whatever is inside there is more likely to die than hurt us. Besides, first contact with a new species could be valuable to the Empire." The process of bringing the alien ship aboard took nearly an hour. Corvanian technology made it easy, but they worked carefully. Nobody wanted to accidentally kill their unexpected guest before they could learn anything useful. When they finally opened the alien vessel, the crew gathered around it with curiosity and excitement. The being they found inside was unlike anything they had seen before. It was small, even smaller than a young Corvanian. Its skin was pale and soft-looking, without scales or natural armor. It had only 4 limbs instead of 6, and its head was round with strange features. Most unusual were its eyes, which were small and placed close together on the front of its face. "Fascinating," Dr. Kane said as his medical scanners worked over the unconscious creature. "Bilateral symmetry, carbon-based biology. Its bone structure suggests it comes from a world with heavy gravity, but its muscles are surprisingly weak." "Will it live?" Thane asked. "I think so. It's suffering from oxygen deprivation and some minor injuries, but nothing fatal. I should be able to wake it up soon." They moved the alien to the medical bay and waited. Thane found himself strangely curious about this unexpected visitor. In all his years serving the Empire, he had encountered dozens of different species. Most were either too primitive to be interesting or powerful enough to be threats. This creature seemed to fall somewhere in between. When the alien's eyes finally opened, Thane was standing beside the medical bed. Those strange, small eyes looked around the room with what seemed like confusion, then focused on Thane's face. "Can you understand me?" Thane asked. The ship's translation system would need a few minutes to learn the alien's language, but sometimes basic communication was possible through gestures. To his surprise, the alien nodded slowly. The translation system must have worked faster than usual. "Yes," the creature said in a weak voice. "I can understand you. What are you called?" Thane asked gently. "My name is James," the alien replied. "I'm human. Thank you for saving my life." The word human meant nothing to Thane, but he filed it away in his memory. Where do you come from, James? A world called Earth, James answered, trying to sit up on the medical bed. I was on a survey mission when my ship was damaged. I've been drifting for days. Dr. Kane stepped forward with his scanner. You should rest. Your body has been through a difficult experience. James looked around the medical bay with what appeared to be genuine curiosity and gratitude. Your technology is incredible. Your people must be very advanced. Thane felt a small surge of pride. We are the Corvanian Empire. We control many star systems. Impressive, James said, and his tone seemed genuinely respectful. My people are still learning about space travel. We've never encountered another intelligent species before. Lieutenant Vex, who had been watching from the doorway, snorted with amusement. Primitive. Just as I thought. If James heard the comment, he gave no sign of being offended. Instead, he looked at Thane with those strange, calculating eyes. Would it be possible to learn more about your people while I recover? James asked politely. This is an amazing opportunity for someone like me. Over the next several days, James became a familiar sight aboard the Dark Wing. Dr. Kane had cleared him for limited movement around the ship, and the human seemed eager to learn everything he could about Corvanian culture and technology. Your people must be very organized, James said as he walked beside Commander Thane through the main corridor. How do you manage such a large empire? Thane was happy to explain. Few people showed such genuine interest in military organization. We have clear chains of command. Each sector has a military governor who reports directly to high command on our home world. James nodded thoughtfully, pulling out a small notebook he always carried. He wrote something down with a primitive writing instrument. And communication between worlds? That must be challenging across such distances. We have quantum communication arrays at every major base, Thane explained. Messages can reach any part of the Empire within hours. Remarkable, James said, sketching something in his notebook. The engineering required must be incredible. Lieutenant Vex watched the human from across the corridor and shook his head. Look at it trying to understand our technology, he said to another officer. Like a child playing with tools it can never use. James seemed not to hear the comment or chose to ignore it. He continued asking questions about ship operations, fleet movements, and military procedures. His curiosity appeared endless, and his questions were always polite and respectful. In the engineering section, Chief Engineer Dane found the human particularly interesting. Your fusion reactors are beautiful, James said, studying the massive power core through the observation window. The energy output must be enormous. 10 times more powerful than anything your people have built, I'm sure, Dane replied with obvious pride. This single reactor could power your entire homeworld. James wrote more notes, asking detailed questions about power distribution, backup systems, and maintenance procedures. Dane was happy to explain, enjoying having such an attentive audience. Your safety protocols are very thorough, James observed. What happens if the reactor needs to be shut down quickly? Dane showed him the emergency shutdown procedures, explaining each step in detail. The whole process takes less than 30 seconds, he said. Very efficient. Impressive design, James agreed, sketching the control panel layout in his notebook. In the weapons bay, Security Chief Vale gave the human a tour of their defensive systems. These plasma cannons can destroy a small moon, Vale boasted. And our shields can withstand almost any attack. James listened carefully as Vale explained targeting systems, power requirements, and operational procedures. How do you coordinate attacks with multiple ships? He asked. Each ship has tactical computers that link together during battle, Vale explained. Perfect coordination every time. Your people are truly advanced warriors, James said admiringly. My people could learn much from you. The crew gradually grew comfortable with their guest. James was polite, grateful for their rescue, and seemingly harmless. He asked questions like a curious student and showed proper respect for their superior technology. During meal times, James ate with the regular crew, listening to their stories about battles and conquests. He seemed particularly interested when they talked about other species they had encountered. Most aliens we meet are either too weak to matter or strong enough to be threats, explained Weapons Officer Cray. Your people sound like the weak type. We are peaceful, James agreed. We spend most of our time farming and creating art. We've never fought a war between worlds. This statement caused several crew members to laugh. No wonder you got lost in space, Vex said mockingly. Warriors learn navigation skills. Farmers just wander around. James smiled good-naturedly at the jokes. You're probably right. We have much to learn about surviving in a dangerous galaxy. In his private quarters, James worked late into the ship's night cycle. His notebook contained detailed drawings of ship layouts, security systems, and crew rotation schedules. What the Corvanians thought were innocent sketches of their technology were actually precise technical diagrams. He had mapped the location of every critical system aboard the Dark Wing. He knew which corridors were monitored and which were not. He had learned the access codes for several restricted areas by watching crew members enter them. Most importantly, he had identified the exact weaknesses in their defensive systems. When Dr. Kane checked on him one evening, James was reading from a data pad the medical officer had given him about Corvanian history. "Learning about our great conquests?" Kane asked. "Yes," James replied. "Your people have accomplished amazing things. The Battle of Rigel 7 was particularly clever." Kane beamed with pride. "That victory established our control over the entire sector. We used superior tactics and technology to defeat forces 3 times our size." "I'm curious about your communication systems during that battle," James said. "How did you coordinate so many ships across such a large area?" Kane was happy to explain the tactical details, including the specific frequencies used and the backup communication protocols. James listened carefully and took more notes. As the Dark Wing approached Command Station 7, where James would be transferred for further study, the humans seemed excited about seeing more of Corvanian civilization. "Will there be many ships at the station?" he asked Thane during their final dinner together. "It's one of our largest military bases," Thane replied. "Hundreds of ships, thousands of personnel. You'll see the true power of our empire." "I look forward to it," James said, and there was something in his eyes that might have been anticipation. That night, as the crew prepared for their arrival at the station, James made final additions to his notebook. Every piece of information he had gathered, every weakness he had discovered, every tactical detail he had learned was carefully recorded. The Corvanians thought they had rescued a lost explorer and learned about a primitive new species. They had no idea they had just given their most dangerous enemy a complete guide to destroying them. The Dark Wing was only 2 hours away from Command Station 7 when the first alarm sounded. Commander Thane was reviewing arrival procedures when the sharp warning tone echoed through the bridge. "What's happening?" Thane demanded, rushing to his command chair. Lieutenant Vex worked frantically at his console, his scaled fingers moving quickly across the controls. "Navigation system is offline, sir. Complete failure. Switch to backup systems," Thane ordered. "Backup navigation is also down," Beck reported from her communication station. "And sir, I'm losing communication with Command Station 7. All external communications are failing." The bridge lights flickered, then switched to the dim red glow of emergency power. More alarms began sounding throughout the ship as system after system went offline. "Engineering report," Thane called into his communicator. Chief Engineer Dane's voice crackled through the failing system. "Commander, someone has sabotaged our main computer core. They knew exactly which systems to target. This isn't random damage." A cold feeling settled in Thane's stomach. "Where is the human?" Security Chief Vale checked his scanner. "His quarters are empty, sir. We're searching the ship now." "Find him," Thane ordered. "Search everywhere." The hunt for James took 20 minutes that felt like hours. Emergency lights cast strange shadows throughout the ship as security teams moved through corridor after corridor. Finally, Vale's voice came through the communication system. "Found him, Commander. Engineering section, main control room." Thane ran through the corridors, his heart pounding with a mixture of anger and fear. When he reached the engineering section, he found something that made his blood turn cold. James stood calmly at the main engineering control panel, his hands moving across Corvanian interfaces with impossible skill. His movements were quick and sure, like someone who had used these systems for years. Chief Engineer Dane lay unconscious on the floor nearby. "Stop what you're doing immediately," Thane shouted, raising his weapon. James turned around slowly, and the change in his appearance was shocking. Gone was the grateful, curious expression he had worn for days. His eyes were cold and calculating, and he moved with the confidence of a trained soldier. "I'm afraid I can't do that, Commander," James said in a calm voice. "I have work to finish." "You're sabotaging my ship," Thane accused, keeping his weapon aimed at the human. "I'm completing my mission," James corrected. "You see, I haven't been entirely honest with you about who I am." Security Chief Vale and 2 guards entered the room, weapons drawn. James ignored them completely, continuing to work at the control panel. "You said you were a lost explorer," Thane said. James smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. I'm a reconnaissance specialist with the human colonial navy. My ship wasn't lost, Commander. It was bait. The words hit Thane like a physical blow. Bait? We knew Corvanian ships patrolled this sector. We knew you would investigate a distress signal. We knew you would bring me aboard. James finished whatever he was doing at the control panel and stepped back. And we knew you would tell me everything I needed to know about your military capabilities. You're a spy, Vale said, his weapon trained on the human. I'm a soldier, James replied. And thanks to your hospitality, I now know exactly how your ships work, how your fleets operate, and how your command structure functions. The ship shuddered as more systems failed. Through the observation windows, Thane could see something that made his worst fears come true. New contacts were appearing on their failing sensors, sleek ships emerging from what had seemed like empty space. Human warships, James said, noticing Thane's expression. They've been waiting for my signal. Your people describe themselves as peaceful farmers, Thane said, his voice filled with disbelief. For a moment, James's expression became almost sad. We are peaceful, Commander. We would much rather tend our gardens and create beautiful things. But we learned something important long ago on our homeworld. What? Thane asked. If you want peace, you must be prepared for war. And we've had thousands of years to become very good at war. The main view screen flickered to life, showing Command Station 7 in the distance. As Thane watched in horror, the massive military installation came under attack from human ships that seemed to appear from nowhere. Impossible, Vale whispered. Our shields, our weapons, are all designed to fight enemies who think like you do, James finished. You fight for conquest and glory. We fight for survival. There's a difference. The human warships moved with coordination that seemed impossible. They struck at specific points on the station's defenses, each attack perfectly timed to support the others. Within minutes, the station's shields collapsed completely. How many ships do you have? Thane asked. Enough, James replied. But numbers aren't what matter. What matters is that we know everything about your tactics, your technology, and your weaknesses. Information that you gave me willingly. Thane realized the full scope of what had happened. Every question James had asked, every system he had shown interest in, every piece of information the crew had shared, it had all been part of a carefully planned intelligence operation. The questions about our communication systems, Thane said slowly. Now we know how to jam them, James confirmed. The reactor specifications. We know exactly how to overload them safely. The tactical discussions. We understand your battle strategies better than some of your own officers do. Security Chief Vale took a step forward. You used our trust against us. James looked at him directly. You never trusted me. You thought I was harmless because my technology looked primitive. You assumed that a peaceful species must be a weak species. That was your mistake. The ship shook again as human vessels moved closer. On the communication system, a voice speaking perfect Corvanian offered terms of surrender. This is Admiral Sarah Mitchell of the human colonial fleet, the voice said. Corvanian vessels, you are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender now and you will be treated according to the laws of war. Thane looked at James with new understanding. This was all planned. Every detail, James agreed. We've been watching your empire for months, learning your patrol patterns and your military procedures. When we were ready, we sent me to get the information we couldn't observe from a distance. Your damaged ship, your injuries. All real. It had to be convincing. James moved toward the exit. I suggest you consider the surrender offer, Commander. Your people fought bravely, but this war was over before it began. As James left the engineering section, Thane realized that everything he thought he knew about warfare had just changed forever. 6 months after the attack on Command Station 7, Commander Thane found himself leading one of the last remaining Corvanian battle groups. The war had gone badly from the very beginning, and each new battle brought fresh horrors that Thane struggled to understand. The humans fought like no enemy the Corvanian Empire had ever faced. They seemed to know exactly what the Corvanians would do before they did it. Every tactical manual, every standard military procedure, every time-tested battle strategy, the humans had answers for all of them. At the Battle of Kepler Station, Thane had commanded a fleet of 30 heavy warships against a human force half that size. It should have been an easy victory. Instead, he watched in disbelief as the human ships systematically destroyed his fleet using tactics that seemed impossible. They're targeting our communication arrays first, reported his new communications officer, a young female named Reed. Every ship that loses communications is destroyed within minutes. Switch to backup frequencies, Thane ordered. They're jamming those too, sir. They know all our communication protocols. The human ships moved with perfect coordination while the Corvanian fleet fell into chaos. Without reliable communication, the large Corvanian vessels became isolated targets. The humans picked them off one by one with surgical precision. How are they doing this? Lieutenant Vex asked, his voice filled with fear. Thane knew the answer, though he hated to admit it. They're using our own knowledge against us. Every piece of information we shared with that spy is being used to destroy us. The worst part was not just losing the battle, it was the way the humans fought. They offered surrender terms to every Corvanian ship before attacking. They rescued survivors from destroyed vessels. They treated prisoners with respect and provided medical care for the wounded. It's not natural, Vex muttered after another defeat. No species should fight like this. They're too organized. Thane had begun to understand something that his superiors refused to accept. The humans were not just better at tactics, they were fighting a completely different kind of war. When Corvanians fought, they fought for conquest, for glory, for the expansion of their empire. The humans were fighting for something else entirely. At the siege of Proxima Colony, Thane witnessed something that changed his understanding of warfare forever. The human fleet surrounded the heavily defended Corvanian world, but instead of attacking immediately, they began broadcasting messages to the population below. Citizens of Proxima Colony, came the transmission in perfect Corvanian. We are not here to conquer your world. We are here to free you from military occupation. Any civilian who wishes to leave will be given safe passage. They're trying to turn our own people against us, Security Chief Vale observed. But that was not what happened. Instead of leaving, many of the colonists began providing information to the human forces. They revealed the locations of military installations, the schedules of supply ships, and the weaknesses in the planetary defenses. Why are they helping the humans? Vale asked in confusion. Thane understood. Because the humans are offering them something we never did, a choice. The human attack on Proxima Colony was unlike anything in Corvanian military history. Instead of bombarding the planet from orbit, human troops landed in specific locations with surgical precision. They captured military targets while avoiding civilian areas completely. Within days, the planet's defenses collapsed without massive destruction or loss of life. But it was at the Battle of Rigel Prime that Thane truly understood what made the humans so dangerous. His fleet arrived to defend the important industrial world, only to find human ships already in the system. How did they get here before us? Reed asked. We used the fastest hyperspace route. The answer came from Captain Wells, one of the few Corvanian officers who had survived multiple encounters with human forces. They don't just fight battles, he explained. They fight entire campaigns. While we're responding to one attack, they're already planning the next 3. The human fleet at Rigel Prime was not there to fight a traditional battle. Instead, they had spent weeks organizing the planet's oppressed population into a rebellion. When the Corvanian fleet arrived, they found themselves fighting not just human ships, but an entire planet in revolt. The workers have seized the weapons factories, came reports from the surface. The transport pilots are refusing to fly. Even some of our own troops are laying down their weapons. Thane realized that the humans had turned the Corvanian Empire's greatest strength, its vast size, into a weakness. Every world the Empire had conquered through force was now a potential ally for the humans. They're not trying to conquer us, Thane told his officers during an emergency meeting. They're trying to make conquest impossible. The final blow came at the Battle of Centauri Gate, the key hyperspace junction that controlled access to the Corvanian home systems. Thane commanded the largest fleet the Empire could assemble, over 200 warships, including their most powerful battlecruisers. The human force that met them was smaller, but it included something new: ships crewed by former Corvanian subjects who had joined the human cause. Aliens from dozens of worlds that the Empire had conquered were now fighting alongside the humans. They're using our own people against us, Vex said in amazement. Not our people, Thane corrected. People we conquered. People who never wanted to be part of our empire. The battle lasted 3 days, but the outcome was never in doubt. The combined human and allied fleet fought with a coordination and determination that the Corvanians could not match. They were not just fighting for victory, they were fighting for freedom. When his flagship began taking heavy damage, Thane received a communication from the human admiral. Commander Thane, came the familiar voice of Admiral Mitchell. Your position is hopeless. Surrender now, and your crew will be treated with honor. Looking around his damaged bridge, seeing the fear in his officers' eyes, Thane made the hardest decision of his military career. All ships cease fire, he ordered. We surrender. The war was over, and Thane finally understood what it meant to face humanity in battle. 3 years after the war ended, former Commander Thane lived quietly on the farming world of New Haven. The small planet had once been a Corvanian military outpost, but now it served as home to refugees from across the former empire. Thane spent his days working in the fields, growing crops he had never seen before the humans arrived. The work was hard but peaceful. Each morning, Thane would walk to his small plot of land and tend to the vegetables that fed his community. It was strange how satisfying this simple work felt after years of commanding warships and planning battles. "The corn is growing well this season," said his neighbor, an elderly Corvanian female named Vera. She had been a teacher before the war and now helped run the local school. "The human advisors taught us well," Thane replied, checking the soil moisture with tools the humans had provided. "Their farming methods are much better than what we used before." This was true. The humans had not simply conquered the Corvanian Empire and left the survivors to struggle. Instead, they had sent teachers, doctors, engineers, and farmers to help former Corvanian worlds build better societies. It was not what Thane had expected from a conquering army. In the afternoons, Thane often sat on his small porch and watched the children play in the village square. Many of them were from different species, former slaves and conquered peoples who now lived together as equals. The human approach to governing was unlike anything Thane had seen in his military career. "You look thoughtful today," said a familiar voice. Thane looked up to see James approaching, no longer wearing the simple clothes of a lost explorer. Now he wore the blue uniform of a human colonial navy captain, with ribbons and medals that showed his important rank. Despite everything that had happened, Thane felt no anger toward the man who had helped destroy his empire. "Captain James," Thane said, standing up politely. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I'm making inspection visits to several worlds," James explained, sitting down in the chair beside Thane's porch. "Making sure the peace agreements are working properly." "And what do you think of our little community?" Thane asked. James looked around at the peaceful village, the mixed groups of children playing together, and the well-tended farms. "It looks like people are building something good here. Something worth protecting." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the daily life of the village continue around them. Finally, Thane spoke the question that had bothered him for years. "I've been trying to understand something," he said. "Your people could have simply destroyed us completely. Instead, you've helped many of our worlds become more prosperous than they ever were under the Empire. Why?" James was quiet for a moment, as if choosing his words carefully. "Because destruction was never our goal. We didn't fight to conquer or to get revenge. We fought to protect ourselves and to break the cycle of conquest that was spreading across the galaxy." "Your people are remarkable warriors," Thane said. "I've studied the battles we fought. Your tactics, your strategies, your coordination. How did humans become so good at warfare?" "We had excellent teachers," James replied with a sad smile. "We spent thousands of years fighting each other on our homeworld. Every possible way to wage war, every strategy and tactic, every method of organization and communication, we learned it all through centuries of conflict." Thane nodded slowly. "You fought each other?" "Constantly. Different nations, different cultures, different beliefs, we found endless reasons to fight. We became very, very good at it." James paused, looking at the playing children. "But we also learned something else. We learned what war really cost. Not just in ships and weapons, but in lives and futures and hope. So when you finally reached the stars, we decided we didn't want that cycle to continue. When your empire found us, you gave us something we had never had before, a common enemy that united all of humanity." James looked directly at Thane. "You faced not just one nation or one culture, but the combined military wisdom of our entire violent history." This explanation made sense to Thane in a way that nothing else had. "We thought your desire for peace made you weak. Many species make that mistake. Peace isn't the absence of strength, Commander. It's the choice not to use that strength unless you have no other option." James stood up, preparing to continue his inspection tour. "We genuinely prefer peace. It's why we stayed in our own solar system until you found us. But when someone threatens what we care about, they discover that peaceful people can be the most dangerous enemies of all." As James walked toward his transport ship, Thane called after him. "What happens now? To the galaxy, I mean." James stopped and turned back. "Now we help rebuild. There are other empires out there, other species that prey on the weak. But they'll find something different now, a coalition of worlds that chooses cooperation over conquest. Protected by people who understand that sometimes the greatest act of peace is the willingness to fight for it." Thane watched the human ship lift off and disappear into the sky. That evening, he sat down at his small desk and began writing in a journal he had been keeping since the war ended. He wanted to record his experiences, his thoughts, and the lessons he had learned. "Today I finally understood," he wrote, "why humanity was able to defeat the Corvanian Empire. We mistook their hope for peace as inability to wage war. We thought strength could only look one way. We learned too late that the most dangerous enemy is one who fights not for glory or conquest, but for the simple right to exist in peace." He closed the journal and looked out at the quiet village. Tomorrow he would tend his crops again, teach the local children about the old days, and continue building this small piece of the better galaxy that humans and their allies were creating together. The survivor finally understood what it truly meant to face humanity in battle, and what it meant to find peace afterwards.